Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome back to another on-the-road video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Today, we'll show you how to remove and replace the drive motor on this Frigidaire top-load washing machine. Now, let's begin your repair. Stop. Before beginning any repair, always be sure to disconnect the power to the appliance. It is also recommended to test the outlet for the proper voltage. Remember to also turn off the water. Generally speaking, you can tip the washing machine back in order to access these components, but for video purposes, we have went ahead and laid it down so that we can see everything good and make sure that we get all the tape off. Now, each one of these components, unfortunately, are hardwired. A lot of machines will have it where they just have a Molex connector. You can pop it off and then you take off the actual component and replace it. We have a motor, we have the clutch shifter mechanism, we also have the drain pump here. All of these components, unfortunately, do not have a Molex. Every single one is hardwired. So, to start each one of these repairs, there's a couple of necessary steps that we will have to take in order to remove the pieces. Starting with removing strain relievers, we will have to remove the tape from the wiring harnesses to separate them, as well as the top here has a bag that has all of the Molex connectors to the hardwired components. So, to begin, we'll first start to cut the first strain reliever here. Now, I would recommend leaving it on here. You can just pop it off, but good thing is, if we leave it on here, you can see exactly where the zip tie was at. So afterwards, you can go through, replace any type of zip ties that you cut so that the wiring harnesses aren't just dangling. So we'll go ahead and cut that one. Next, I recommend finding a tape seam. Once you find the seam, start to unravel your wiring harnesses here. Make sure you have electrical tape in any one of these jobs, as it is highly recommended to rewrap them so that nothing can get snagged. Okay. So as you can see, now we can see where each one of these are distributed. This will be good to follow the wire. So if you got the motor wire, we have the white one. You have two black ones, one for the drain pump, which is here, one for the clutch assembly, which is here. Now the strain reliever on the back here, we're gonna have to use something to kind of pry it apart. Pop it apart. You may break it. This one, I did kind of pop it apart and it snapped, just plastic. There's also one zip tie at the top. I will carefully use my cutters to pop it apart. Once again, leave it in place so that you can see exactly where it was. You will have to remove this white foam. Going around it is sort of an adhesive. So start to peel it apart. That way we can have better access to all of our wiring harnesses. Wow, it's actually stuck in here. So now that we have that, we will untie our bag at the top and we'll drop it down a little bit. Now this bag is to prevent moisture from going on the wiring harnesses, and it also is held on with tape. So unravel the tape, drop the bag down. Now we have clear access to a whole heap of wiring harnesses. Now that we have the wiring separated here, we can access all the Molex connectors. We have clear access to our motor assembly. The first thing I would do is you can check for voltage based off of the tech manual coming to the harness. A common problem that I see with these is that the actual capacitor, which is mounted up inside, will not have a good reading, so it's not sending the correct power to the motor. So make sure you have the correct power going in. Now, a common symptom that you'll find when these motors are going bad is it may hum, but it actually will not start. You can usually try to start it and spin the motor, and then it will start up. That is a common symptom of a bad start winding. The run windings, generally speaking, whenever it's running, it may overheat, stop, smell a burning smell, and you will not be able to turn it back on for like 20 minutes because it has to cool down prior to allowing it to turn back on. Noises is a very common symptom, and you can kind of isolate it down to the motor. If you do need to replace it, it is not exactly a walk in the park. As you can see, the wiring harness goes through, it's hardwired to the motor, goes over the guard here, goes through the clutch assembly, and then up to the wiring harness. So to start, we're going to have to remove the clutch assembly to remove the wiring. I'm going to use a 10mm socket this time to remove the bolts. I'd take the bolts out. You can just let the clutch assembly drop and sit there. We'll need to get back to it later. Move the wiring out of the way. Next, we will need to remove the actual guard. Once again, I'm going to use a 10mm socket. Just pull out your guard, set it aside, set the bolts aside for it. We'll remove our belt, start to pull up on the main pulley line here, and turn it to drag it off of the pulley system. Pull out your wiring, find out which one it connects to. This time is going to be the white Molex here with the red, green, and black. This is also where you can test for power. Next, we're going to switch our sockets out. This one is a 13mm. Looks like there are 4 bolts on it that will have to be removed. I'm going to go ahead and hold on to the motor. I don't know how it's actually going to disattach whenever it falls down, so I'm going to apply some pressure, start to remove the bolts. When you're taking them off, it's a good idea to keep the washer system on each one so that you know exactly which side it was on. So we have one set off. Looks like there's a holding bracket up here and some tabs. So once we remove the bottom ones, probably going to press out on these tabs to remove the motor and the holding bracket. Just in case, hold on to the motor. Actually, it fell right down out of place, which is nice. So then grab your motor and set it aside. When installing your motor, it is kind of heavy. Just be careful when installing it. I'm gonna hold it up here, get that first bolt started. Give it a little torque. Now just kind of hold it in place. Let's get the bottom one lined up. At least one of the bottom ones lined up, rather. Start to twist it in. Let's get this mounted. Now you can give it some torque. We'll go ahead and attach the other two. Should line right up. If you have 2 of them lined up, we'll be fine. Remember, the wiring fed around. Let's go ahead and feed it. Let's attach it to your Molex in the back here. I'm gonna push it right above those bolts so it can't lay right on top of the gear case. Now, let's reattach the belt. Start on the pulley system at the top. Give it a turn, hold on to your belt, and start to bring it onto the pulley. Just keep turning, hold it and turn. Eventually, it'll make its way on there. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a fight. Okay, once we are at least on, so that's holding it, when turning it, push pressure over on the edge until you see the seams line up. Since it's a rib belt, it does need to line up in the seams of this pulley system, so make sure that the inner edge is lined up perfectly as well as the top edge. Once again, just kind of tuck your wires up to keep them out of the way. Reinstall your guard. Bring up our clutch system. The wiring went underneath it. I'm assuming that is to hold it in place almost as a strain reliever. Bring in our first bolt. Tighten it up, make sure that it's in the correct place. Everything's hooked back up. Now we can redo the wire. Now that we have finished any repairs we need to do underneath, obviously the time has come to fix our wiring. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm going to try my best to demonstrate how I would do it out in the field. So basically, first we want to remove this strain reliever. I'm going to use a tack puller, just kind of pop it out of there. Pop that up. See how much room we have. It's going to be difficult to get a zip tie in it. Let's try to get it started. Okay, there's a little bit of a problem. We'll put a tack puller inside of it and try to get it out through the side. Well, it doesn't seem like the zip tie is going to go through with the tack puller. I'm going to try a small flat blade screwdriver. So let's see if I can't weave this through here. So we got it started, at least out, so we have something to bite onto. And what we want to do is pull this all the way so that the head gets to the end. Be careful your wiring. If you're pulling it like I am, you don't want to accidentally cut a wire. So just keep feeding. That's pretty good. We'll pull it all the way to the end so that we can trim the excess. Let's start to bundle the wiring up right here on this portion of the harness. A lot of this stuff is going to get taped up and put inside the bag at the top. So let's just get a nice little strand of tape started. Start to wrap it up. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason or any type of way that you should do this. You're just trying to make sure it's just not flopping around. So we'll give it a nice amount of tape here. Pop it off. The harnesses are just kind of dangling there, so let's go ahead and zip tie this one up. Now, I used a quick release zip tie, probably not a bad idea, so if you need to take it back off, you can take it back off and mess with it, and you don't have to try to weave another one in. Now, let's pull this up, see how much slack we got on all this stuff. There should be quite a bit. All right. Get a nice little hunk of this. Make sure we have all the Molexes that we had previously. Keep pulling, try to get as much slack as you can. All right, a nice little bundle there. Let's tuck it back in this bag. I'll get this old tape off. Tuck it back in the waterproof bag here. Make sure the bottom of the bag is pulled all the way down. You want it to kind of have a neck on it. And the reason why you want that is because you're going to tape around that as well. This is to hold it so that the bag doesn't fall off. We'll get a nice little strip. Start to wrap it around. And you don't have to do it too tight, because if for some reason you put too much in here and you didn't give yourself enough slack when you're trying to mount it, you need to be able to pull some of the wiring out. So as you can see, mine's tugging a little bit. I'll just pull it down some without pulling it all out. That actually is fitting up there perfect. So we'll mount it up. Bring around our tie. Give it a couple of twists. This is just to kind of secure it to the wall. If you want to wrap this cloth around it, you can. I don't think it's going to stick too well. No. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little bit more electrical tape just to make it nice and neat. And this is far from perfect. Obviously, do it however is going to work best for you. But just make it look nice and neat up there. We don't want wires hanging down and have the possibility of getting caught on one of the shocks or anything like that where it could strip it down and short it out. That looks good. I'm comfortable with that. We'll pop the bottom wire. Even though our strain reliever is broken, you kind of get the point. We'll pop it in place. If it wasn't broken, make sure you bring it over, snap it in place. And a little ground strap is hanging down some, so I'm going to use another zip tie. And I'm just going to bring it around this entire harness one more time to hold anything that is kind of sticking out. Pull that ground strap through so it's not dangling. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that. Cut off the excess from our zip ties. Now we can tip the washing machine back up, and that will complete your repair. Thank you for watching another quality video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.